Missouri is officially a blue blood football program, at least for now. Let's talk about the why and more right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. On today's program, I want to dive even further into the quarterback position for the future for Missouri. But you know what? Regardless, let's start off with Missouri being a blue blood, and obviously continuing to recruit good quarterbacks is going to go a long way into Missouri retaining that blue blood status. Now, some of you may be throwing things at your screen or possibly just ripping out your earbuds in disgust, but I'm just telling you right now, saying that Missouri is a blue blood, at least at this moment in time in terms of football, is not even really a hot take whatsoever. It's just the reality of the situation. Now, just to give you an example, let's just figure out where Missouri is right now in terms of recruiting versus where it was just a few short years ago when I started working for Locked On Mizzou. Well, for example, just a huge weekend for wide receivers. Missouri a couple weekends ago hosted a ton of big-time offensive line prospects. Well, this is really the weekend for receivers, which makes a lot of sense considering, again, the quarterback, Matt Zoller's a 2025 commit for Missouri. He's on his official visit this weekend as well. So the big names you're starting off with here, Jayvan Boggs from East St. Louis, Corey Sims, a CBC St. Louis product, and also Donovan Olugbode, a Florida player. These are all four-star guys, all top 100 national guys overall, not just at receiver, but overall type players in town this weekend. You look at the waters that Missouri is swimming in for these guys, it's just unusual. It really is. For Missouri, take Jayvan Boggs, for example, a former Ohio State commit, a guy that, well, Missouri is now in his top two along with Central Florida. He trimmed that list down from a group that included Georgia. And this is no longer just a one-off. This is now a regular occurrence. In fact, a couple other receivers, Missouri is basically, according to Power Mizzou, it's basically a Missouri and Michigan battle at this point for the services of Jacob Washington and also Sean Terry, who was formerly a Notre Dame commit. So it shows we can take on not only the SEC blue bloods these days, but also the Big Ten blue bloods as well. I can certainly get used to this, and I'm guessing you Missouri fans can as well. And obviously Missouri is not going to win all of these battles. I just listed off 5 receivers there. And again, you're not going to win them all, but just the fact that time and time again, the list of teams that Missouri is competing with is truly the blue bloods of college football, the teams of the last 50 to 100 years of this sport, quite literally. Teams like, again, Michigan, Georgia, Oklahoma, Alabama. Well, again, this is very unusual. If maybe you're a recent convert to being a Missouri fan, maybe you're a Mizzou student who's out of state, that type of thing. Well, just let me tell you, you're living in a very nice time right now, and enjoy it while it lasts, because history says it very well might not. And again, just go back a few years here. The first class that I really followed closely for the Locked On Podcast Network was the 2020 class, and that was really a transition class, meaning mostly Eli Drinkwitz had to re-recruit a bunch of guys who were already committed to Missouri under Barry Odom. But a lot of important players came out of that class, including Chris Drain, as he was known back then. Well, Nebraska was maybe Missouri's biggest competition there. Notable, though, that the in-state Alabama Crimson Tide, Auburn, no offers there for Chris Abrams Drain. Of course, Brady Cook ended up being a heck of a find for Missouri and Barry Odom in particular. considering Brady only had notable offers from Lindenwood, Southern Illinois, and Austin Peay. And yet, Missouri very early in the process took Brady Cook, and Cook, being a longtime Missouri fan, jumped on that offer. You're also talking about Johnny Walker and Zeke Powell, especially Walker, obviously the Cotton Bowl MVP last year on the defensive side, but Powell, a contributor as well. Both, well, those were Kansas State, probably their biggest guys there. Harrison Mevis, Washington State. Also Jay Macklin, who ended up back in the SEC, transferred to North Texas. Now he's going to be with Kentucky this year. Well, Missouri probably battling it out with Arizona State for his services. So obviously some solid programs there that I listed off. And with the exception of Brady Cook, definitely some Power 4 programs, as we now call them. But really it wasn't until Ennis Rakestraw that we really had a true Eli Drinkwitz recruit. He really may have been the first true Eli Drinkwitz recruit. And Missouri beat out Texas and Alabama before Rakestraw. They definitely wanted him, for sure, but Missouri made a huge push. Eli Drinkwitz got the job done. And as many of you probably remember, as most of you probably remember, Drinkwitz went viral there because he went crazy. Somebody on the Missouri staff was filming him as he was watching the ceremony there, and Drinkwitz just started running down the hall, high-fiving everybody on the staff. And, of course, a lot of opponents started making fun of Drinkwitz for that, saying, wow, this guy's going nuts over landing a 3-star. Congratulations. Well, I think it was more about who the Tigers and Drinkwitz beat out for Rakestraw and what that really meant to the program at the time. The good news, it was far from a one-off, and now really it's a regular occurrence, I should say, where Missouri is frequently competing with the likes of Texas and Alabama for recruits and actually hanging in there and winning a fair share of those battles. Obviously, Bama and Texas, those type of teams are going to win their fair share of battles as well. But when it comes down to why Missouri is now recruiting at a level that, frankly, a few years ago, I wouldn't have thought was possible. Well, why is it happening? Frankly, it's not just one thing. It's really a confluence of events that have all bubbled up here in the last few seasons. Now, if you're an Oklahoma fan and you're still upset that Caden Green came to Missouri, you may be saying, oh, it's all about NIL. Missouri just has good NIL right now, favorable NIL laws in state, and all that good stuff. And certainly that is a factor. No question about it. Missouri is very competitive based on all accounts in the NIL space. I'd say they're a top 10, 15 type program just in terms of that particular infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, I mean not only the Missouri laws that are in place, but everything that the Missouri Athletic Department has done behind the scenes, and also just the people and businesses in general who are willing to donate right now. Also, Eli Drinkwitz himself obviously deserves a tremendous amount of credit. He and his staff have raised the bar for Missouri, even before things like NIL became a reality, but also the transfer portal in general. I think while it was a rough start for the Tigers, when Dominic Lovett and Mekhi Wingo, probably the two best players in that particular, unquestionably at this point, the two best players in that particular recruiting class, well, they both went to other schools, one to Georgia, one to LSU. But since then, though, you have to say, especially this past offseason, my goodness, Missouri has been a net beneficiary of the transfer portal. I think Missouri is sort of in kind of the right spot here in your Goldilocks zone of not too hot in terms of, hey, you're a traditional big-time blue blood program that is just getting 5-star after 5-star after 5-star. At a certain point, you run out of spots on the depth chart for all those guys. But Missouri is a big enough program. They're in the SEC. They have good NIL infrastructure. You're kind of right in that zone of big enough to attract a lot of big-time athletes, but not so small that you're going to be ignored by them. Again, I'm talking about a net positive here. Again, Still, Alabama is going to have an advantage over Missouri. I'm not trying to convince you otherwise. I'm just saying, again, what is the net result here? I think ultimately teams like Alabama are going to maybe lose some guys off the depth chart, while meanwhile teams like Missouri, at least until we're truly a blue blood for maybe the next 5-10 years, if we're lucky enough for that to happen. I really think that Missouri is a net beneficiary here. You look at this past offseason, Missouri added a bunch of guys who we expect to contribute big time, who are already parts of the two deep. And yet, not very many guys who were expected to compete for a starting job this year left the program. In fact, I can't really think of one. So I think to my point there's your why. It's the portal, it's NIL. It's also Eli Drinkwitz himself, though. I think he deserves a massive amount of credit, and also just for taking advantage and being able to change during a period where there has been so much change in college football. You see people like Nick Saban retiring. Well, Eli Drinkwitz isn't going anywhere. He's meeting the challenge. And coming up, let's talk more about the future of the quarterback position for Missouri, including Drew Pyne and where Missouri could be looking in the transfer portal, Brady Hart, all that good stuff. But first, as a golfer, I've been hearing for years PXG say nobody makes golf clubs like they do, period. And you know what? They're absolutely right. I went in, found out myself, swung the PXG Black Ops driver. Jacob got me fitted for it, just banged balls into that TrackMan for an hour or so. And by the end of it, man, I had a driver that was perfectly fitted for me. Not only me as a taller golfer for sure, but a guy with a high ball flight. You know what? Jacob nailed me down a couple of degrees. I was a little skeptical, I have to admit. I thought I was going to lose some forgiveness there with a lower ball flight. But you know what? PXG made me a believer, and they'll do the same for every golfer in Kansas City. Visit pxg.com/lockedonmizzou to schedule your fitting at PXG Kansas City. It's 7517 West 119th Street in Overland Park. Get fitted for any club, and you'll get a dozen golf balls free. That's pxg.com/lockedonmizzou to schedule your fitting. pxg.com/lockedonmizzou. Limit 1 dozen golf balls per person. Promotion ends June 30th. Other terms and conditions may apply. See store for details. And passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With more than 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Well, as much as I've talked about quarterback Matt Zollers on the show, of course, the Pennsylvania product ranked as highly as the number 2 quarterback prospect in the country over by On3.com. But it probably is important to note that Matt Zollers, not only is he not taken a snap for his senior year of high school yet, also not officially signed to Missouri yet. I think it's a safe assumption, I would say, that he will make it to Missouri. But you never know what can happen in this world. But if you think it's too early to start talking about, the 2025 class, well, you're really going to hate talking about the 2026 class. But the reality is we just saw Brady Hart, a guy I've brought up quite a bit, number one, because he received an offer from Missouri here over the spring, summer period here, but also because he's teammates with Jayvan Boggs, a receiver from Cocoa Beach. his teammate who is going to be visiting Missouri this weekend? Well, Brady Hart just recently announced on his social media that he has committed to the University of Michigan. So Michigan wins one over the Tigers. Hopefully Missouri will get at least one of those receivers, possibly Sean Terry, maybe the most likely. But who knows? We shall see. The point here is, though, with the quarterback position, I think this is going to be a new trend. I really think the 2026 quarterbacks and just quarterbacks in general, they're just going to start coming off the board more early, and specifically the highly ranked quarterbacks, guys, the 4 and 5 star type guys that are obviously going to be in heavy demand from the big time NIL infrastructure teams like Missouri and Oregon and of course the University of Miami and Alabama and Georgia and all the names you would of course expect. So I think these bidding wars, this new reality that we find ourselves in, and of course, you know, something I've talked about a lot too, the proliferation of information on all of these quarterbacks, the camps, the video. It's just so much more easy to access with broadband internet and all that kind of stuff than it was years and years ago. I just think with each and every passing off season, this is what we're going to see. So Missouri right now has got to be looking at 2026 quarterbacks pretty hard. But when it comes to 2025 on the football field for Missouri, the actual college end of this whole program, still lots of discussion about Drew Pyne and 2025. And from my perspective, I handicapped it as I thought the former Notre Dame product and Pyne, if I were going to handicap it, I'd say he is more likely to start than Sam Horn at this point, simply because it's been a long time since Horn has played any significant football. But I also said that I think just as likely, if not more likely than Pyne, would be a guy who's not even on the roster right now. Another transfer portal quarterback could be in the cards for Missouri this coming offseason, not the one we're right in. And here's the thing. This is not so much anything specific about Pyne himself. It's quite a bit more than that, because even without Luther Burden and Theo Weiss, for example, on the 2025 roster, Missouri is still going to be a really desirable destination for all the reasons I laid out in my Why is Missouri a Blue Blood segment. Well, at least for now. All of those reasons are valid for why Missouri is going to be obviously a destination in 2025 in the transfer portal, especially if Missouri manages to keep Kirby Moore, the offensive coordinator, around for another season. And Pyne has high-end experience, and he did a fair amount of winning as a starter. The problem is, again, forget about my opinions on Pyne, but he also came to Missouri as a backup for a reason. He obviously did not come to Missouri expecting to compete with Brady Cook for the starting job this season. That's just not realistic. Now, you could say, hey, maybe the rest of the country's evaluation of him as a player is wrong. That could absolutely be true. We've seen the NFL continuously get their evaluations of quarterbacks wrong all the time. But I will say it's a little different when you see somebody play in college. Now you have an evaluation, a more accurate evaluation of what they're going to be like in college. It's a lot different when you're going from high school to college or college to the NFL. Those are the types of evaluations you see wrong the most frequently. When it comes to within the level of football, suddenly those evaluations, in my opinion, start to get a lot more accurate. I think that just makes logical sense. Again, though, regardless, the market can be wrong, but the market is telling you exactly what it thinks of Pyne. They can be wrong, but right now it's telling you he's a backup quarterback. Maybe Missouri likes him better than the rest of the country. Maybe they think they have something in him. Maybe they do. I've heard good things about Pyne so far through the grapevine, but again, I could spend a ton of time evaluating Pyne, his time at Notre Dame and Arizona State, but I'd say what the actual market is telling us is probably a better indication of his value than anything. And ultimately, I think if anything, I think if I got to rethink this, do the odds for next year, I think a portal guy is probably the most likely option of all. And you know what? The last time I drove by a stadium in Providence, I did notice some work happening on the north end zone. So let's do a quick update on that progress here. But also, first, I want to tell you about FanDuel, because this time of year, it is absolutely baseball season, and you can bet on all of it, whether it's the baseball, the Copa America. Yes, the NBA Finals is over, but futures, heck, NFL futures, NCAA futures, it's all right around the corner. Well, right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the World Series winner to who's going to hit one out of the park. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. I'll tell you, I'm tempted to bet on the Royals tonight, but that would just be an emotional fan there just wanting a win against the lowly A's, minus 176. Just no value there, so let's be better than that. But regardless, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. It's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Now, while it's not necessarily obvious on the outside of the stadium right now, if you just happen to be driving by Faurot Field, but there is some work being done on the north end zone video board. In fact, again, while from the outside you can't really see anything, but from the inside of the stadium, or just a good angle from Stadium Boulevard, for example, you can see that north video board has basically been taken down. The whole front of it is definitely getting a facelift. So the plan of having a new video board and audio setup for the 2024 season seems to be well underway. And again, the plan there is to eventually take that video board, the new video board, and make it a part of the new entire north end zone complex, which is scheduled to open for the 2026 Mizzou football season. We'll see how all of that goes, but right now there is stuff happening, so it makes me think, hey, that seemed a little ambitious to get that done by the football season, but seems like they're well underway. So just a quick construction update for you there. Also a little scheduling update for you Mizzou basketball fans out of there. The Bragging Rights game, December 22nd, is going to be the date for that particular ball game. And also, another note here I wanted to say, I've talked a lot about Matt Zollers recently. He is now at the Elite 11 camp. We've already seen a lot of recaps from day one at that particular camp. And I will just say this, God bless all the people out there who are writing that content. If it gets clicks for them, makes them money, fabulous. And I say get clicks. I don't mean that as a pejorative whatsoever. Goodness knows I'm in the business of getting as many eyeballs and listens on my particular show as I possibly can. But I will say this, I could not care less about Elite 11 camp content because, again, quite honestly, you're seeing quarterbacks play against air, a bunch of guys who, of course, they're going to be impressive athletically. I just don't really see a whole lot of value in analyzing any of this stuff, especially if you're not actually there in person, you're reading somebody else's account. Just not a whole lot of value there. That's just me. But again, keep cranking them out. If it's hitting numbers for you, I can't blame anybody for putting it out there. I just can't say I'm reading a whole heck of a lot of it. All of these guys look tremendous when they're playing against absolutely nobody or against subpar defenses or whatever it might be. I think that maybe as evaluators of quarterbacks, camps, etc., maybe we need to do a better job, the royal we there, not me specifically, but maybe the football world needs to do a better job of just putting quarterbacks under duress, not under injury risk in July in the offseason, of course, but under actual duress in terms of throwing from weird platforms, getting pushed around a little bit, having an uncomfortable pocket, whatever it might be. I don't know. We just need to figure out a way to replicate actual football scenarios a little more because, again, even as I said earlier, even at the NFL level, you're just seeing so many misses at the quarterback position. Doesn't seem like it's getting any better lately. And that'll about do it for this edition of Locked On Mizzou. On tomorrow's program, going to talk to the Scout Master, yes, Brian Smith, once again. Going to talk about Michael Clayton II, Missouri's latest quarterback offer in the 2026 class. Brian knows the entire country, but he especially knows Florida very well. So we'll talk to him about that Florida product, all types of recruiting topics. Also get his perspective on Missouri and the 10-2 debate. He's now the Locked On Florida State host, too. So he'll have a pretty interesting perspective there, in my opinion, as a Florida State guy. So until tomorrow, I am John Miller, and this has been Locked On Mizzou.